My boyfriend lied to me so he could go out with his ex, then told me to deal with it. I dumped him on the spot. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 29 when my boyfriend looked me in the eye and calmly told me he had no intention of letting go of his ex-girlfriend. What shocked me wasn't what Ethan said, but how relieved he looked after finally saying it. 6 weeks earlier, I still believed we had a happy, stable relationship. Ethan Walker and I met at a barbecue hosted by a mutual friend from my gym. I almost skipped it after a long day at work, especially with the rain turning the backyard into a muddy mess, but then Ethan showed up carrying 2 bags of ice, his faded grey shirt soaked through at the shoulders. Catching me eyeing the gate, he smiled and said, "You look like you're planning your escape." "I'm considering it." "Give me 10 minutes, he laughed. "If I'm boring, I'll help you sneak out." Instead of leaving, I stayed for 3 hours. Ethan was effortlessly funny without needing to be the center of attention. As a graphic designer at a marketing firm, he loved telling stories about impossible clients who wanted logos to look more expensive or posters that somehow needed to feel louder. We exchanged numbers before the barbecue ended, and within a month we were spending most evenings together. Our relationship slipped into a comfortable routine. He kept a toothbrush at my apartment, I left a charger at his place, and we reached the point where we ordered each other's favorite meals without asking and playfully argued over who owned which side of the bed. Everything moved quickly, but it felt natural. Ethan made me feel secure, and for nearly 2 years I never questioned what we had. Then Olivia Carter came back. She had dated Ethan for almost 4 years before I met him, and they'd broken up about 8 months earlier. Whenever she came up, he described her as talented but impossible to build a future with. She never wanted to grow up, he told me once. She kept quitting jobs, playing in bands, and chasing dreams that never went anywhere. He said he wanted stability instead, a real career, a real home, and a future that didn't depend on whether someone's band landed another weekend gig. I never felt threatened by Olivia. Everyone has a past, and I believed hers belonged there. 6 weeks before our relationship ended, Ethan handed me his phone. "Olivia reached out," he said. Her message explained that she'd changed. She'd left her band, found steady work as a sound engineer, and wanted to apologize for how their relationship had ended. Ethan watched my reaction carefully before saying, "She says she just wants closure." "Do you?" After a brief hesitation, he nodded. "I think I do." So I told him to meet her. At the time, I believed that was what trust looked like. Letting someone have an honest conversation instead of treating every former relationship like a threat. They met for coffee once. That evening, Ethan came home looking lighter than I'd seen him in months. "She apologized for everything," he said. "Honestly, it was nice. I think we can finally be normal around each other." "I'm glad," I replied, and I meant it. What should have ended with a single conversation quietly became something else. Over the next few weeks, occasional updates turned into daily contact, and before I realized it, Olivia had become part of our relationship without ever being invited into it. At first, it seemed harmless. Ethan mentioned that she'd sent him a song, told him about a strange client at the studio, or reminded him of a restaurant they used to visit. Then the messages stopped being occasional. Her name appeared on his phone first thing in the morning, during dinner, while we watched movies, and late at night when he thought I was asleep. Sometimes he smiled at her texts with a warmth I hadn't seen directed at mine in months. I tried to ignore it. That was the embarrassing part. I noticed everything anyway. I noticed him turning his phone face down whenever I walked into the room, laughing at inside jokes I wasn't part of, and growing impatient whenever I interrupted him while he was texting her. Every instinct told me something had changed, yet I kept repeating the same warning to myself. Don't become the insecure girlfriend. 3 weeks after Ethan met Olivia for coffee, I finally spoke up. We were eating takeout at my kitchen counter, and he'd checked his phone 4 times in less than 10 minutes. "Are you and Olivia talking every day now?" His hand froze above the screen. "What?" "Her name comes up a lot." He set the phone down harder than necessary. "We're friends, Claire." "I know." "Then what's the problem?" I chose my words carefully. "It feels like you're talking to her more than you're talking to me." "That's not true." "It feels true." The warmth disappeared from his face. "So this is about jealousy?" "No, it's about how much time and attention you're giving someone you used to love. Adults can be friends with their exes." "I never said they couldn't." "You didn't have to." He leaned back with his arms folded. "You're turning this into something it isn't." Instead of standing on my ground, I found myself defending my feelings. "I'm not trying to control you." "Then trust me." "I do." "Good, because I'm not cutting off a friend just because you're uncomfortable." That single word lingered long after the conversation ended. Uncomfortable. It made my instincts sound irrational instead of reasonable, so I apologized for bringing it up. Ethan kissed my forehead, picked up his phone again, and smiled at another message from Olivia. Over the next week, I tried to act as though nothing had changed. I stopped asking who was texting, stopped glancing at his screen whenever he laughed, and kept reminding myself that trust meant respecting his privacy. Eventually, I realized something painful. Looking back, I wasn't trusting Ethan. I was giving him the benefit of the doubt while he kept giving me reasons not to. The following Friday, we were supposed to have dinner at a small Italian restaurant downtown. Ethan had even bought a dark green button-down for the date, and I'd spent the afternoon deciding what to wear. At 4:30 he texted, "I'm exhausted, work destroyed me today. Can we reschedule? I just need a quiet night alone." I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. "Of course, get some rest. We'll do dinner another night." He sent back a heart emoji. I changed into sweatpants, poured myself a glass of wine, and settled onto the couch to answer emails. Around 10 o'clock I opened Instagram, and the first story that appeared belonged to one of Ethan's friends. Loud music, flashing lights, and a crowded concert venue filled the screen as the camera swept across the audience. Then it found Ethan. I was standing beside Olivia, laughing in the same dark green shirt he'd bought for our date. Her hand rested comfortably on his arm as he leaned down to hear her over the music, smiling with an ease that looked painfully familiar. I couldn't breathe. Instead of calling him or sending an angry message, I quietly took a screenshot and stared at it until my phone screen went dark. I hadn't cancelled dinner because he was exhausted. He'd cancelled because he'd decided he'd rather spend the evening with Olivia. In that moment, every uneasy feeling I tried to ignore finally made sense. The distance I'd been imagining wasn't imaginary at all. Someone else had already stepped into the space between us. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same image. Ethan laughing beneath the concert lights, Olivia's hand on his arm, and the shirt he'd chosen for what was supposed to be our evening together. The photo didn't prove he'd kissed her or slept with her. It proved something just as important. He had looked me in the eye, lied about needing a quiet night alone, and chosen to spend our date with the woman he'd once planned a future with. That hurt more than enough. I thought about confronting him a dozen times before morning, but in the end I decided I wanted to hear his explanation before he realized I already knew the truth. The next afternoon he arrived with iced coffee like every other weekend and leaned in to kiss me, but I turned my head just enough for his lips to brush my cheek. "You okay?" "Just tired." I walked inside as though Friday had unfolded exactly as he'd claimed. "You feeling better?" I asked. He smiled. "Much better. Guess I just needed a quiet night to recharge." The lie came so naturally, it almost sounded practiced. "A quiet night?" "Yeah. You stayed home?" "Mostly." Not a hint of guilt crossed his face. He genuinely believed I'd never know. I unlocked my phone, opened the screenshot, and slid it across the counter. I didn't realize this looked like staying home. His expression faltered for a split second before he recovered. "Oh, you forgot to mention the concert. It wasn't planned." "You told me you were exhausted." "I was, but you still found time to spend the evening with Olivia." He shrugged. "She called at the last minute. She had an extra ticket, and I didn't think you'd enjoy that kind of music." That was it. No apology, no regret, just another excuse. "You understand why this hurts me, right? It was one concert. You cancelled our date. It wasn't a big deal. It was to me." He sighed. "I knew you'd overthink this." Once again, my reaction became the problem instead of his lie. I took a slow breath. "I'm not upset because you went. I'm upset because you lied." "I didn't lie. You told me you were spending the evening alone." "I changed my mind." "And never thought to tell me?" After a brief silence, he replied, "I didn't think it mattered." That answer unsettled me more than the concert itself. He honestly believed lying to me wasn't important. Eventually, he reached for my hand. "I don't want us fighting over something this stupid." Neither did I. That's why I let the conversation end. Not because I believed him, but because I wasn't ready to admit what my instincts had been telling me all along. The next few days looked normal on the surface, but nothing felt the same. Ethan answered Olivia's messages almost instantly, smiled whenever her name appeared, remembered every story she told, and somehow forgot conversations we'd had only the day before. None of it proved he was cheating, yet it quietly revealed who occupied his attention. By Tuesday, we were both working from my apartment when Olivia called. Ethan answered before the second ring, his voice softening immediately. "Hey!" Without another word, he walked into my bedroom, closed the door, and stayed there. I tried to work, but the minutes dragged by. 23, 31, 38, 43. When he finally came out, he looked lighter, almost cheerful, then sat down and went back to work without offering a single explanation. 10 minutes later, I closed my laptop. We need to talk. He barely looked up. About what? Olivia. He sighed. Seriously? You just spent 43 minutes alone in my bedroom talking to your ex. It was a phone call. It was a private 43-minute phone call while you were spending the day with me. I wanted privacy. Why? Because I knew you'd react like this. I'm reacting because this stopped being normal weeks ago. He laughed under his breath. There you go again. What does that mean? Every conversation becomes about Olivia. Because she's become part of every day. We're friends. This stopped looking like friendship a long time ago. His jaw tightened. You don't get to decide that. No, I get to decide what I'm willing to accept in my relationship. He stood. So you're giving me an ultimatum. I'm telling you how your choices make me feel. No, you want me to choose? I want honesty. You already have it. No, I've watched you lie about seeing her, cancel plans with me, and disappear into my bedroom for nearly an hour to talk to her. You keep calling it friendship, but your actions tell a different story. His expression hardened. I'm not giving up my friendship with Olivia. Deal with it or don't. The words landed with surprising calm. Weeks earlier, they would have broken me. Instead, they gave me the answer I'd been searching for. Okay, I said. He smiled with obvious relief, convinced I'd finally accepted his decision. Good. I knew you'd understand. I knew you'd trust me. I picked up my keys and looked at him steadily. I do understand. I paused just long enough for his smile to grow. I understand you're choosing Olivia and I'm choosing myself. You keep your ex. I'll keep my dignity. We're done. His expression froze. What? We're done. He gave a nervous laugh and searched my face, waiting for me to back down. Claire, stop. You're not ending 2 years over one mistake. No, I replied quietly. I'm ending 2 years because you lied, chose someone else over our relationship, and expected me to accept it. We're just friends. You cancelled our date to be with her. I already explained that. You made excuses. That's different. He fell silent, then muttered, It was one mistake. The only one I know about. His eyes dropped. He didn't deny it, didn't argue, didn't even pretend to be offended. That hesitation answered the question I'd been afraid to ask. I pointed toward the front door. It's time for you to leave. He frowned. You're seriously kicking me out? I'm asking you to leave my apartment. Visiting 4 nights a week doesn't make this your home. My name is on the lease, I pay every bill, and this relationship is over. For a moment, he stood there in disbelief before stuffing his laptop, charger, and a few clothes into his backpack. You're throwing away 2 years because you can't handle me having one friend. I shook my head. I'm ending 2 years because somewhere along the way, you stopped acting like my partner. He stared at me, waiting for regret that never came. You're making a mistake. I already made one, I said. I should have left the first time you lied. That finally reached him. His confidence faded, replaced by a look that suggested he'd never imagined I'd actually leave. He stopped in the doorway. I'm a good boyfriend, Claire. A good boyfriend doesn't ask the woman he loves to compete with his past. Ethan left without another word. After locking the door behind him, I leaned against it, expecting to break down, but the tears never came. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks, a quiet sense of relief, as though I'd finally stopped holding my breath. About 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was my best friend, Mia. Mia, are you okay? Why? I replied. She answered with a screenshot. Ethan had already posted an Instagram story, a black background with white text reading, When someone chooses their pride over love, there's nothing you can do except let them walk away. There were no names, but there didn't need to be. Less than 30 minutes after our breakup, he was already rewriting the story to make himself look like the victim. I didn't argue or respond. I blocked him everywhere. His phone number, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. Then put my phone down. For the first time in weeks, silence felt more valuable than another conversation. The peace lasted until the next morning, when an unknown number called. Hello? Finally, it was Ethan calling from someone else's phone. You blocked me. Yes, that's immature, I sighed. So borrowing someone else's phone is your way of ignoring the boundary I already set? We need to talk. We already did. You never let me explain. You had 6 weeks to explain. You spent them lying. I wasn't lying. You were. He let out an irritated breath. You're making the biggest mistake of your life. No, I'm making a decision after watching yours. A long silence followed before he asked quietly, Is this really it? Yes. I hung up and blocked that number too. An hour later, His best friend Lauren texted me. "Claire, please don't throw this away. Ethan's a mess." I answered with a single sentence. He chose Olivia, I chose myself. She insisted they were just friends, but I locked my phone without replying. I was done defending a decision I'd already made. Later that afternoon, Ethan's mother called and left a voicemail. "Relationships take compromise. My son made a small mistake. Please don't punish him like he'd done something unforgivable." A small mistake. Apparently, that was how weeks of lies had been reduced in Ethan's family's eyes. I deleted the voicemail and went to work, realizing everyone around him wanted me to forgive him, yet not one person had asked what his choices had done to me. Around lunchtime, the friend who had introduced us found me in the break room. "I heard you two broke up." "We did." Ethan said it came out of nowhere. I gave him a tired smile. Did he mention cancelling our date to take Olivia to a concert, or talking to her every day, or lying about all of it? His expression fell. "No, I figured." He sighed. "I owe you an apology." I believed his version. "I don't blame you. It sounded convincing." Before leaving, he paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I think you made the right decision." I carried those words with me for the rest of the day. After weeks of wondering whether I'd overreacted, hearing someone else confirm I hadn't finally quieted the guilt. That evening, Ethan showed up at my apartment, carrying takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. I watched through the peephole as he knocked, called my name, and insisted we could fix everything. But I never opened the door. Instead, I sent one message through Google Voice. "I'm not opening the door. Please leave. If you stay, I'll notify building management that you're refusing to respect my boundaries." He read it, stood there for another minute, then quietly left the food outside my door before walking away. Inside the bag was a handwritten note. "I'm sorry for lying about Friday. I know I hurt you, but you're hurting us too by refusing to work through this. We're supposed to be a team. Please don't give up on us. I love you." Even his apology came with blame. Accountability still depended on me sharing responsibility for what he'd done. I threw the note away and realized something simple. If this was the best apology he could offer, leaving had been the right decision. The next morning, I changed my apartment's access code, then stopped by the management office before work. "My ex-boyfriend knows the old code," I told the property manager. "We broke up a few days ago, and I don't want anyone letting him into the building." He nodded immediately. "I'll let the front desk know. If he gives you any trouble, call us." Walking back outside, I realized I'd stopped trying to save the relationship. I was finally protecting my own peace instead. That peace lasted only 2 days. Early Friday morning, as I crossed the building lobby on my way to work, I saw Ethan waiting near the entrance with a paper coffee cup beside him. His hair was unkempt, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and he looked like he hadn't slept. But the moment he spotted me, he stood up. "I've been waiting," he said before I could ask what he was doing there. "We need to talk." "We already did." "You ended the conversation." "I ended the relationship." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've started seeing a therapist. They think we need one honest conversation." "I hope it helps," I replied, "but we've already had that conversation." "Claire, I miss you. I wasn't cheating." "No," I said calmly. "You lied, then expected me to accept it. Those aren't the same thing." When I tried to leave, he followed me onto the sidewalk. "You won't even listen." "I listened for 6 weeks. You just didn't like the answer I finally gave." "So you don't care that I'm hurting?" I stopped only long enough to look back. "I believe you're hurting. You're also living with the consequences of your own choices." I left him standing there and spent the afternoon emailing building management, asking them to document every visit or attempt he made to contact me. I hoped the records would never matter, but something told me I'd need them. For 2 quiet days, I almost believed he'd accepted the breakup. Then Sunday arrived with 17 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and 9 text messages from his mother. She began by pleading for me to call because Ethan was devastated, then accused me of being stubborn before insisting that ignoring them wouldn't make the problem disappear. I deleted every message and blocked her number. Around noon, Mia called. "Have you checked Facebook?" "No, don't." Of course I did. Ethan had posted a long emotional story painting himself as the victim of an insecure girlfriend who couldn't respect his healthy boundaries. He carefully left out the concert, the lies, and Olivia, telling only the version that made him look abandoned. Most people believed him until one mutual friend commented, "Didn't she catch you lying about seeing your ex?" The comment disappeared within minutes, and so did the account that posted it. By Monday, the rumors had reached work. Melissa from accounting admitted she'd seen the post and quietly said, "It sounded too perfect." I smiled, because it was. Real life is never that clean. Tuesday evening, the doorman called to say a young woman claiming to be Ethan's friend was refusing to leave an envelope for me. When I finally collected it, I found 3 handwritten pages describing how heartbroken and misunderstood Ethan was. He blamed everything except the one thing that had actually ended our relationship, his own choices. Ethan insisted. Olivia had always been just a friend and blamed me for destroying something beautiful because I couldn't trust him. Halfway through the letter, he wrote, "I'm willing to forgive you if you're ready to apologize too." Forgive me? After weeks of lies? I actually laughed. The last paragraph was even worse. Call me by Friday. We can start over. If you don't, I'll know you never truly loved me. It wasn't an apology. It was another ultimatum from the same man who had told me to deal with it. I photographed every page, saved the images, and met with an attorney recommended by a coworker. After listening to the calls, surprise visits, social media posts, letters, and repeated attempts to contact me through other people, he nodded. You've done the right thing by documenting everything. If he contacts you again after you've clearly told him to stop, you may have grounds to request a protection order. Walking out of his office with a growing folder of screenshots, I realized how quickly life had changed. 2 weeks earlier, I'd been planning vacations with Ethan. Now I was collecting evidence against him. I had finally stopped hoping he'd become the man I remembered and started preparing for the possibility that he would ignore yet another boundary. Friday came and went without a word from me. I never called, texted, or even considered it. The silence lasted exactly 1 day. Early Saturday morning, the front desk called. "Ms. Bennett, your ex-boyfriend is here." I closed my eyes when the receptionist added, "He's not alone." "Who is he with?" "A woman. I believe it's Olivia." My attorney's warning came back to me immediately. If Ethan contacted me again after I'd clearly told him to stop, it mattered. "Please call the police," I said. "They're already on their way." Before going downstairs, I started an audio recording on my phone. Ethan and Olivia were waiting in the lobby. He looked determined, while she seemed visibly uncomfortable. "You never called," Ethan said. "You told me not to contact you." "I told you not to contact me. There's a difference." He gestured toward Olivia. "I brought her so we can clear this up." Olivia offered me an uneasy smile before quietly admitting, "Ethan told me the two of you had already broken up before the concert." I looked at Ethan. "When?" "Before the concert," she answered. Without saying another word, I opened the screenshot I'd saved weeks earlier and handed her my phone. He cancelled our dinner that night because he claimed he was exhausted. She stared at the picture, then turned back to Ethan. "You told me you were already single. We were basically over," he muttered. "No," I said calmly. "We'd had one conversation about how much time you were spending with her. That's not a breakup." Olivia's expression slowly changed. "You also told me she couldn't accept that we were friends." Ethan struggled to answer. "It wasn't exactly like that." "He told me you only wanted closure," I added. "I did," Olivia replied. "But after we started talking again, he kept saying your relationship was already falling apart." The realization hit her all at once. "You lied to both of us." "It wasn't lying," Ethan protested. "It was complicated." "No," she said, taking a step back. "You made me believe I wasn't hurting anyone." Before he could respond, 2 police officers entered the lobby. After confirming that I'd repeatedly told Ethan to stop contacting me, I handed the female officer the folder I'd prepared with the screenshots, call logs, letters, emails, and a written timeline of every incident. She reviewed the documents, then looked at Ethan. "Is your name on the lease?" "No." "Were you previously told not to return to this building?" After a long pause, he answered quietly, "Yes." "Then you're trespassing." I just wanted to talk. "She has made it clear she doesn't want contact." Ethan looked at me one last time. "Claire, please. I've done everything I can. I love you." For a brief moment, I remembered the man I'd met at that rainy barbecue, the one who made me laugh and convinced me we had a future together. Then I looked at the evidence in the officer's hands and remembered the man standing in front of me instead. Looking at him, I realized our relationship hadn't ended that morning. It had ended the moment honesty stopped mattering to him. I met Ethan's eyes one last time. "You loved having me," I said quietly. "You stopped loving what I deserved." The words seemed to drain the fight out of him. Olivia looked from Ethan to me, her face filled with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I didn't know." "I believe you." She nodded once. "I won't contact him again." Without another word, she walked away, leaving Ethan standing alone for the first time since this all began. One of the officers stepped beside him. "Sir, it's time to leave." He looked at me, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're really doing this?" I shook my head. "No, you did." The officers escorted him outside without resistance. Before leaving, the female officer returned my folder and said, "You've documented everything well. Since you've already spoken with an attorney, I'd recommend filing for a temporary protection order on Monday." "I will." After everyone left, the doorman apologized for everything I'd been through and assured me they would keep watching for Ethan. Back upstairs, the apartment felt strangely peaceful. An hour later, Mia arrived with a pizza and sparkling water, declaring, "No relationship talk unless you want to." We spent the afternoon watching old movies and laughing at terrible dialogue. For the first time in weeks, life almost felt normal again. I hoped that would be the end of it. It wasn't. Monday morning, I walked into the courthouse carrying a folder that now held screenshots, call logs, letters, emails, police records, and every documented attempt Ethan had made to contact me after I told him to stop. The judge reviewed everything carefully before asking only a few questions about when I'd ended the relationship and how Ethan had continued contacting me. After a long silence, he signed the paperwork. "You've documented this thoroughly. I'm granting a temporary protection order. Mr. Walker may not contact you directly or indirectly or come within 500 feet of your home or workplace. If he violates this order, notify law enforcement immediately." When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. For the first time in nearly a month, I didn't feel happy. I felt safe. The order was served the following afternoon, and within hours, Ethan's mother tried contacting me through my office. My attorney immediately told me to document it because indirect contact after the order still mattered. My manager also reassured me the company would handle any future calls so I could focus on my work. The days that followed were surprisingly quiet. No unexpected visits, anonymous calls, or handwritten letters. After living with constant tension, even ordinary silence took time to trust. Late Friday evening, an email arrived from Olivia. She apologized, explaining that Ethan had convinced her our relationship was already over before they started spending time together. By the time she realized he'd lied to both of us, she had already become part of a situation she never wanted. After the confrontation at my apartment building, she cut contact with him, blocked his number, and wished me the honesty I should have received from the beginning. I read the message twice, then closed it without replying. I wasn't angry anymore. The truth had already done everything I needed it to do. That night, Mia came over with groceries, insisting homemade pasta was the best cure for emotional disasters. We laughed while cooking, burned the garlic once, started over, and filled the apartment with the kind of ordinary conversation I'd been missing for weeks. Later, I carried a mug of tea onto my balcony and looked out over the city. Looking back, the biggest warning hadn't been the concert, the 43-minute phone call, or even Ethan's ultimatum. It was much simpler than that. He'd told me exactly who he was. "I'm not giving up my friendship with Olivia. Deal with it." I spent weeks hoping those words meant less than they actually did. Looking back, I wasn't grateful the relationship ended. I was grateful it ended before we signed a lease together, merged our finances, planned a wedding, or built a future on promises that had already stopped being honest. Walking away hurt, but staying, would have cost me far more. I stood on the balcony with a mug of tea, watching the city settle into another ordinary evening. My phone rested untouched behind me, and for the first time in weeks, its silence didn't make me anxious. There were no excuses to decode, no late-night messages to question, and no wondering whether I was asking for too much. I laughed to myself, realizing how strange that sounded. Peace had become so unfamiliar that it almost felt suspicious. Then I remembered something Ethan used to say whenever I questioned him. "You're overthinking." Maybe I had been overthinking, just not the right thing. Instead of questioning Ethan's lies, I'd spent weeks questioning myself. I finished my tea, switched off the balcony light, and stepped back inside. As the sliding door closed behind me, it wasn't the sound of a relationship ending. It was simply the sound of closing a door I should have closed a long time ago.